Hello and welcome to Cyclocosm.com's How the Race Was Won, which this week travels to the north of France to experience the world's toughest race. It's tough on the motos, tough on the spectators, tough on the bikes, and most of all, tough on the riders. Narrow, battered roads, bumping shoulders, battling for whatever road space you can find, and 260k later, some lucky bastard gets to taste the thrill of victory. So this time around, how did we get from there to here? This year's race began on a deceptively easy note. Normally, conditions vacillate wildly between extremes of mud pit and dust bowl, but this past Sunday, things were just as right as a baby bear's porridge. The end result of these unseasonably nice temperatures was a group of 11, 4 minutes up the road, and a more or less intact field behind. Silence Lotto pretended they wanted to chase, but as we'll see in a moment, they really didn't need to. Things clung together until 111k to go, when a flurry of attacks began swirling off the front of the field. The tension in the field, which resulted in the day's first major tie-up with 99k to go, was the result of the looming end of most riders' races, the Forest of Arenberg. As nasty a stretch of road as human beings have ever created, though it's better referred to as a trench, the Arenberg has about a meter-wide, somewhat rideable stretch at the very crest of the road. The problem arises when the guy in front of you starts to slow down, and you've got to go around him. With room for maybe 3 riders to fit abreast, it's not a question of if there'll be a crash, but when. The only place to ride is at the front, a fact made all the more true by the tow job the camera moto gives to the front of the field. Fortunately, the split is so decisive that riders have to slow up and reassess the race. Even Eddie Merckx never took on Roubaix from 90k out. Quickstep, Cervelo, and a reinvigorated Saxo Bank all came through with good numbers. George Hincapie made the split, but was derailed a few k later when his legendarily poor luck struck again. With liberal assistance from a slipstream team car driven by former teammate John Vaughters, Hincapie was able to rejoin the group just in time for Saxo Bank to attack through a feed zone. Then Boonen decided, at 63k to go, to start shaking things up, and again at 61. At 57k to go, Quickstep's Walter Wayland found himself in a break with Hausler and Kinziato, but Boonen, who was never at a loss for friendly wheels throughout the day, didn't like the shuffle and decided to bring them back himself 5k later. Chavanel immediately countered, and after a few more k of thrusts and parries, Boonen made the decisive attack. The leading 6, Hushovd, Boonen, Pizzato, Flecha, Hosta, and Van Summeren, was an ideal selection, as each rider felt it gave them an advantage. Hushovd had the power edge in a sprint, Van Summeren and Hosta had the numbers, Boonen had the experience and control of the chase behind, Pizzato had his recent sprint victory over Boonen at E3, and Flecha had the choice to simply sit on and plan his attack. All these things drove the group to work well together. Behind, Boonen's minions made life miserable for the chase, and by 30k to go the leaders had enough time to sit up, feed, and chat with the team cars before the final decisive pavé sections. Boonen, who could earlier be seen opening his front brake, pulled off a wily pre-orchestrated bike change that cost the Quickstep rider barely 30 seconds of hard moto pacing, a huge psychological and technical win in a very punishing race. A few k later, the Roubaix mystique took over. Juan Antonio Flecha launched an attack off one section of cobbles. Hushovd countered by attacking into the first corner of the Carrefour de Labres section, and behind him the Spaniard slid out, taking down Hosta and temporarily inconveniencing Pizzato and Van Summeren. Seconds later, Hushovd himself hit the deck after misjudging a sweeping cobbled turn in the chaos of flags and screaming Belgians. Boonen came off the cobbles, realized he was alone, and hit the jets with a 10-second advantage over Pizzato, the last chaser standing. The gap stayed steady for a bit, but between Boonen's aggressive cornering and some favorable motorbike placement, the gap was eventually extended to 30 seconds, relegating Pizzato to second place. Not that Boonen, who used his team's support to perfection, made the attacks that split the race, and drove the break once it got clear, was an undeserving victor, but it would have been nice to see Pizzato offer a challenge to Boonen on the velodrome, rather than a handshake. Behind the leading pair, Hushovd mopped the floor with the Lotto boys, leading an ever more bitter Hosta to say some not-so-nice things about Juan Antonio Flecha after the race. But as the tape shows, it was Hosta's spazzy brake grab and unclip that sent him careening into the fallen Spaniard. Van Summeren easily cleared the crash by holding a tighter line. And, had he ridden off with the leaders, rather than stop to help his bitter, no-result teammate, he might have ended up clear with Boonen and come away with second place. I'm Cosmo Catalano, and that's how the race was won.